Have you ever been in the wrong place at the wrong time and had it turn into something that changed your entire life? Naomi Washington checked her ticket one more time as she walked through the ornate lobby of the Chicago Opera House. Orchestra section, row D, seat 12. The ticket was a gift from Margaret Hoffman, an elderly collector who had been so pleased with Naomi's work curating her late husband's art collection that she had insisted on giving Naomi her season tickets for tonight's performance of La Bohème. "I cannot make it tonight, dear," Margaret had said when she pressed the tickets into Naomi's hand. "And these seats are far too good to go to waste. Take a friend, have a lovely evening, and think of me when you hear the music." But Naomi's friends had all been busy or uninterested in opera, so she had decided to come alone. She did not mind. After a long week of dealing with demanding artists and difficult collectors at the gallery where she worked, an evening of Puccini and solitude sounded perfect. The opera house was stunning, all gilded balconies and red velvet seats, crystal chandeliers casting warm light over elegantly dressed patrons. Naomi was wearing her best black dress, simple but elegant, with pearl earrings that had been her grandmother's. She felt slightly underdressed compared to some of the women dripping in diamonds and designer gowns, but she held her head high as she made her way down the aisle to her seat. Row D was close to the stage, close enough to see the expressions on the performers' faces. Naomi found seat 12 and settled in, placing her small clutch on her lap and glancing through the program. The orchestra was warming up, creating that distinctive cacophony of sound that always preceded a performance. Around her, people were finding their seats, chatting in low voices, the air buzzing with anticipation. Naomi was so absorbed in reading about the lead soprano's impressive credentials that she did not notice the man who stopped at the end of row D and frowned at his ticket, then at the seat numbers, then back at his ticket again. She did not notice him until he cleared his throat and said, in a deep voice with the faintest trace of an Italian accent, "Excuse me, I believe you are in my seat." Naomi looked up and felt her breath catch. The man standing before her was easily one of the most striking men she had ever seen. He was tall, probably 6 feet 3 inches, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples, olive skin, and dark eyes that seemed to see right through her. He wore a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and he carried himself with the kind of effortless authority that suggested he was used to people stepping aside when he entered a room. "I'm sorry," Naomi said, checking her ticket, "but my ticket says row D, seat 12. The man looked at his own ticket, then back at her, and something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but a softening around the eyes. "May I see your ticket?" Naomi handed it to him, trying not to be flustered by how close he was, by the subtle scent of expensive cologne and something else, something distinctly masculine that made her pulse quicken in a way she was not prepared for. The man studied the ticket, then glanced at the seats around them. "I see what happened," he said quietly. "Your ticket is for seat 12 in row D, but this is section B. Section A is on the other side of the aisle. An easy mistake to make." Naomi felt her face flush with embarrassment. "Oh my goodness, I am so sorry. I will move right away." She started to gather her things, but the man held up a hand. "Please, do not apologize, and do not move." He glanced around the nearly full auditorium, then back at her. "The performance is about to start, and your correct seat is likely already occupied by someone else who made the same mistake. Besides, the seat next to me is empty tonight. My guest canceled at the last moment. You are welcome to stay here if you would like." Naomi hesitated. Accepting felt presumptuous, but the lights were already dimming, and the thought of trying to find her correct seat in the dark seemed worse than staying put. "Are you sure? I do not want to impose." "You are not imposing," the man said, and this time he did smile, a brief flash of warmth that transformed his face from merely handsome to absolutely devastating. "I am Dante, by the way. Dante Moretti." He extended his hand, and Naomi shook it, noting the firm grip and the warmth of his palm. "Naomi Washington. And thank you for being so understanding about my mistake." "It is no mistake," Dante said as he settled into the seat beside her, seat 13. "Perhaps it is fate putting you exactly where you need to be." The comment was oddly intense for a casual conversation with a stranger, but before Naomi could respond, the conductor emerged to applause, and the performance began. For the Next 45 minutes, Naomi tried to focus on the opera, on the soaring voices and the tragic story of bohemian artists in Paris. But she was acutely aware of Dante Moretti sitting beside her. He did not fidget or check his phone like some patrons did. He sat perfectly still, his attention seemingly fixed on the stage, but Naomi had the distinct impression that he was aware of everything happening around him with an intensity that felt almost predatory. During a particularly emotional aria, Naomi felt tears prick her eyes. The soprano's voice was so pure, so full of longing and hope and inevitable heartbreak, that she could not help but be moved. She glanced sideways and was surprised to see that Dante's expression had softened, that he too seemed affected by the music. When the first act ended and the lights came up for intermission, Dante turned to her. "What did you think?" "It is beautiful," Naomi said honestly. "I have seen La Bohème before, but never performed this well. The soprano is incredible." "She is," Dante agreed, "though the tenor is somewhat lacking. He has the range, but not the emotional depth the role requires." They fell into easy conversation about the opera, about music and art, and the kind of cultural discussion that Naomi rarely got to have outside of work. Dante was clearly well-educated, knowledgeable about opera and classical music in a way that suggested genuine passion rather than social obligation. "Would you like champagne?" Dante asked as the lobby began filling with intermission crowd. "I would, but the lines at the bar are usually impossible during intermission," Naomi replied. Dante smiled that devastating smile again. "Wait here." He stood and walked toward the lobby, moving through the crowd with an ease that made people unconsciously step aside for him. Naomi watched him go, trying to understand why this man fascinated her so much. Yes, he was handsome and cultured and obviously wealthy, but there was something else, something in the way he carried himself, in the way his eyes constantly scanned his surroundings, in the way people seemed to recognize him and quickly look away. 5 minutes later, Dante returned with 2 glasses of champagne, having somehow bypassed the long lines entirely. "How did you manage that?" Naomi asked, accepting the glass. "I know the house manager," Dante said simply. "Being a season ticket holder has certain privileges." They sipped their champagne and continued talking, and Naomi found herself laughing at Dante's dry observations about some of their fellow opera patrons. He had a sharp wit and a way of describing people that was cutting but not cruel, observant but not judgmental. "So, Naomi Washington," Dante said, as the lights flickered to signal the end of intermission, "what do you do when you are not accidentally sitting in the wrong seat at the opera?" "I am a curator at the Morrison Gallery downtown," Naomi replied. "I specialize in 20th century American art, particularly African American artists whose work has been historically undervalued." "Important work," Dante said, and the approval in his voice seemed genuine, ensuring that overlooked voices are heard and celebrated. "It is what I love doing," Naomi said, "though it can be frustrating sometimes, fighting against institutional biases and collectors who still do not see the value in diversifying their collections." "I imagine you fight that battle well," Dante said. "You have the passion for it. That matters more than any degree or pedigree." Before Naomi could respond, the lights dimmed fully, signaling the start of the second act. As the curtain rose and the music began again, Naomi felt a strange sense of contentment. This evening was not going at all as she had planned, but somehow sitting next to Dante Moretti, this intriguing stranger, with his expensive suit and his knowledge of opera and his way of making her feel like the only person in the room when he looked at her, felt exactly right. She was so absorbed in the performance and in her awareness of Dante beside her that she almost missed the first sign that something was wrong. It started with movement in the balcony boxes, a subtle shift that caught Naomi's peripheral vision. She glanced up and saw a figure standing in one of the private boxes on the left side of the theater, a man who was not watching the stage but looking down at the orchestra section. Looking, Naomi realized with sudden cold clarity, directly at their row. At the same moment, Dante went absolutely still beside her, not the stillness of someone absorbed in the performance, but the frozen alertness of a predator sensing danger. His hand moved almost imperceptibly to touch her arm, a light pressure that felt like a warning. "Naomi," he said, his voice so quiet she almost could not hear it over the music. "When I tell you to move, you are going to slide out of your seat and onto the floor as quickly as you can. Do you understand? What? Naomi whispered, confused and suddenly frightened. Do you understand? Dante's voice was urgent now, his hand tightening on her arm. Yes, but now. Dante shoved her sideways with enough force to send her tumbling out of her seat just as the first gunshot cracked through the theater. The sound was shockingly loud, echoing off the ornate ceiling and cutting through the soprano's aria like a knife. For a moment, everything seemed to happen in slow motion. Naomi hit the floor hard, her shoulder slamming into the carpeted aisle. Above her, she heard more gunshots, heard screaming, heard the orchestra grind to a discordant halt. And then Dante was there, his body covering hers, shielding her completely as bullets tore through the seats where they had been sitting just seconds before. Stay down, Dante ordered, his voice hard and commanding in a way that brooked no argument. Do not move. Do not look up. Do not do anything until I tell you it is safe. More gunshots. More screaming. The sound of people running, of chaos erupting in what had been a civilized evening of culture and refinement. Naomi pressed her face against the floor, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Above her, she felt Dante shift, heard him say something in rapid Italian that sounded like commands. Then his phone was in his hand, and he was making a call, still keeping his body between Naomi and whatever danger lurked in the balcony. It is me, he said tersely. Opera House, Section B. 4 shooters, maybe 5. South balcony box. Get everyone here now. He ended the call and pressed even closer to Naomi, and she realized with a shock that his primary concern was not his own safety but hers. This man, this stranger she had met barely 2 hours ago, was literally using his body as a shield to protect her from bullets that were clearly meant for him. The gunfire stopped as abruptly as it had started. Naomi heard running footsteps, heard shouts and sirens in the distance. And then Dante was carefully lifting himself off her, his hands gentle as he helped her sit up. Are you hurt? He asked urgently, his hands running over her arms and shoulders, checking for injuries. Did any of the bullets hit you? Naomi shook her head, unable to speak. She was trembling violently, shock setting in as her mind tried to process what had just happened. Dante pulled her against his chest, one arm wrapped protectively around her while his other hand held his phone. Around them, the theater was chaos. People were screaming, running for the exits. The performers had fled the stage. Security guards were trying to maintain order but were clearly overwhelmed. You were not supposed to be here tonight, Dante said quietly, and there was something in his voice that might have been regret or anger or some combination of both. This was meant for me, only for me, and you got caught in it because you sat in the wrong seat. I don't understand, Naomi managed to say, her voice shaking. Who were those people? Why were they shooting? Dante's jaw tightened. Because of who I am and what I do, and because certain people in this city have decided they want me dead. Before Naomi could ask what he meant, a group of men in dark suits appeared, moving through the panicked crowd with practiced efficiency. They surrounded Dante and Naomi, creating a protective barrier with their bodies. Boss, we need to move, one of them said urgently. The shooters fled, but there could be more. Take her first, Dante ordered. Get her somewhere safe. No, Naomi heard herself say, surprising everyone, including herself. I am not going anywhere without understanding what just happened. What is going on? Who are you really? Dante looked at her for a long moment, and in his dark eyes Naomi saw something that looked like resignation mixed with regret. I will explain everything, he said quietly. But not here. Not now. Right now, we need to get you to safety before whoever sent those shooters realizes they missed and tries again. But, please, Naomi. The way he said her name, with such intensity and concern, made her hesitate. Trust me for just a little while longer. Let me get you somewhere safe, and then I promise I will tell you everything. Against every instinct that told her to run from this situation and never look back, Naomi found herself nodding. Maybe it was the adrenaline. Maybe it was shock. Or maybe it was the way Dante had thrown himself over her without hesitation, had used his own body to shield her from bullets, had put her safety above his own without even knowing her. Whatever the reason, she let him help her to her feet and keep his arm around her as his men formed a protective circle around them. They moved quickly through the theater, bypassing the main exits where panicked patrons were still trying to escape, and instead went through a back hallway that clearly required special access. Within minutes, they were in an underground parking garage, being ushered into a sleek black SUV with tinted windows. Dante slid in beside Naomi, and two of his men got in the front. The vehicle peeled out of the parking garage with a speed that suggested the driver had extensive training in defensive driving. As they merged into Chicago traffic, Naomi finally found her voice again. "You need to tell me what is happening. Right now. No more delays. No more I will explain later. I need to know who you are and why someone just tried to kill you and nearly killed me in the process." Dante was quiet for a moment, and Naomi could see him weighing his words carefully. Finally, he turned to face her fully. "My name is Dante Moretti, and I am the head of the Moretti family. We are one of the oldest and most powerful organized crime families in Chicago." The words hung in the air between them, and Naomi felt like she had been punched in the stomach. "You are in the Mafia," she said, flatly. "I prefer to think of it as running a diversified business organization. But yes, that is the common term for what my family does." Dante's voice was calm, matter of fact, as if he were discussing the weather rather than confessing to being a criminal. "The men who shot at us tonight were hired by a rival organization that wants to take over our territory and our operations. This has been building for months, but tonight was their first direct attempt on my life. And I was sitting right next to you," Naomi said, her voice rising with a mixture of fear and anger. "I could have been killed because I sat in the wrong seat." "Yes," Dante said simply. "You could have been. That is why I said you were not supposed to be here tonight. The seat next to mine should have been empty or occupied by one of my men who would have known the risks. Instead, it was you, an innocent woman who stumbled into the wrong section and ended up in the middle of a mob war." Naomi pressed her hands to Gray, her face, trying to process everything. "This is insane. This cannot be real. 2 hours ago, I was looking forward to a nice evening at the opera, and now I am in a car with a mafia boss being driven away from an assassination attempt. This does not happen to people like me, people like you," Dante asked quietly. "Normal people. People who work regular jobs and pay their taxes and have never even gotten a speeding ticket. I am a curator, for God's sake. I spend my days looking at paintings and arranging gallery showings. I do not get shot at. You did not get shot at because of anything you did," Dante said, and his voice was gentler now. "You got shot at because you were sitting next to me, and I am deeply, sincerely sorry for that. If I could undo it, if I could go back and insist you move to your correct seat, I would, but I cannot. What I can do is make sure you are safe, that whoever sent those shooters understands that you are not part of my world and not a target, that you were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time." "Where are you taking me?" Naomi asked, looking out the window at unfamiliar streets. "To one of my properties, a penthouse that is secure and protected. You will stay there tonight with a security detail, and tomorrow we will figure out the best way to ensure your safety going forward. I have an apartment. I have a life. I cannot just disappear into some mafia safe house." "Your apartment is not safe," Dante said firmly. "The shooters may not have known who you were tonight, but by now they will have security footage from the opera house. They will see you sitting next to me, see me protecting you, and they will assume you are important to me, which means they will use you to get to me if they can." The reality of that statement settled over Naomi like a heavy blanket. "So, I am in danger now because I accidentally sat next to you." "Yes," Dante said, not sugarcoating it. "For at least the next few days, until we can neutralize the threat and make it clear that you have no connection to me or my business. I have people working on it already, but these things take time." Naomi laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "This is unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable." They rode in silence for several minutes before Naomi spoke again. "When you covered me with your body, when those bullets were flying, you did not hesitate. You just reacted. Why?" Dante looked at her, and in his eyes, Naomi saw something raw and honest. "Because you were innocent. Because you did not choose to be there, did not choose to be part of my world, and did not deserve to die because of my choices." And because from the moment you looked up at me with that apologetic expression and handed me your ticket, I knew you were someone special, someone worth protecting. The confession was so unexpected, so honest, that Naomi did not know how to respond. They pulled up to a gleaming high-rise building, and Dante's men quickly ushered them inside, and up to a penthouse on the 40th floor. The apartment was stunning, all modern design and floor-to-ceiling windows, offering panoramic views of Chicago's skyline. "You will be safe here," Dante said as they entered. "My security team will be positioned throughout the building, and the penthouse itself has several defensive features built in. Panic rooms, reinforced doors, surveillance systems." He gestured around the space. "Make yourself comfortable. The kitchen is fully stocked. There are clothes in the bedroom that should fit you, and anything you need, just ask one of my men and they will get it for you." "What about you?" Naomi asked. "Where will you be?" "I have things I need to take care of, people I need to speak with about tonight. But I will be back tomorrow, and we will talk more then." Dante moved toward the door, then paused and turned back. "Naomi, I know this is overwhelming. I know you must be terrified and angry and confused. But please believe me when I say I will do everything in my power to keep you safe and to resolve this situation as quickly as possible." "Why should I believe you?" Naomi asked, not hostilely but genuinely curious. "You are a criminal. You just admitted to being the head of a Mafia family. Why should I trust anything you say?" Dante smiled sadly. "You should not. You should be suspicious and careful and skeptical of everything I tell you. But I am hoping that my actions tonight, the fact that I used my own body to shield yours without a second thought, will speak louder than my words. I am many things, Naomi Washington, most of them not good. But I protect what is mine. And for tonight, for as long as you need me to, you are under my protection." He left before she could respond, and Naomi found herself alone in a luxurious prison, trying to understand how her life had become something out of a crime thriller. The next morning, Naomi woke in the most comfortable bed she had ever slept in, momentarily disoriented, before the memories of the previous night came flooding back. The opera, the gunfire, Dante Moretti covering her body with his own, the revelation that she had spent the evening sitting next to a Mafia boss. She sat up and looked around the bedroom. Someone had left clothes on a chair, exactly as Dante had promised. Designer jeans, a soft cashmere sweater, even undergarments in what appeared to be exactly her size. She tried not to think about how Dante had managed to know her sizes so precisely. After showering and dressing, Naomi ventured out into the main living area and found breakfast waiting on the dining table. Fresh fruit, pastries, coffee, orange juice. Also waiting was a woman in her mid-30s, professionally dressed, who stood as Naomi entered. "Good morning, Miss Washington. I am Sophia Russo, Mr. Moretti's personal assistant. I hope you slept well?" "As well as could be expected after being shot at," Naomi replied dryly. Sophia's expression softened with what looked like genuine sympathy. "I am terribly sorry about what happened last night. Mr. Moretti wanted me to assure you that he is doing everything possible to resolve the situation and ensure your safety." "Where is he?" "Handling business related to last night's events. He will be here this afternoon and asked if you would join him for lunch." Naomi wanted to refuse, wanted to demand that she be taken home immediately, but she knew that was foolish. If what Dante had said was true, if she really was now a target because she had been sitting next to him, then staying under his protection was probably the smartest choice, at least for now. "Fine," she said. "I will have lunch with him. But I want answers. Real answers. Not vague explanations or empty promises. I believe Mr. Moretti is prepared to be very forthcoming with you, Miss Washington. He knows he owes you that much." Sophia left shortly after, and Naomi spent the morning pacing the penthouse, looking out at the city, and trying to process everything. She tried calling her best friend Keisha, but got voicemail. She tried her boss at the gallery, but it was Saturday, and he was not answering. She felt isolated, cut off from her normal life, trapped in a situation she had never asked for and did not know how to escape. Dante arrived at exactly noon, looking tired but still impeccably dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He carried 2 bags that smelled amazing. "I brought lunch from Angelina's, he said, setting the bags on the dining table. Best Italian food in Chicago. Or so my mother always claimed when she was alive. Your mother? Naomi asked, curious despite herself. She passed 5 years ago. Cancer. She was the heart of our family. The one person who could make my father smile, who could make even the most hardened of his men act like gentlemen. I miss her every day. There was such genuine grief in Dante's voice that Naomi felt her anger soften slightly. Whatever else he was clearly someone capable of deep feeling and love. They sat down to lunch, and Dante served her himself, spooning pasta and chicken and vegetables onto her plate with careful attention. You said you would give me answers, Naomi said once they started eating. So, start talking. Tell me everything. And he did. Over the next 2 hours, Dante told her about his family, about how the Moretti organization had been built by his great-grandfather and passed down through generations. He explained what they did, the businesses they ran, both legal and illegal, the protection they offered, and the prices they charged for it. He told her about the rival family, the Volkovs, who had moved into Chicago 5 years ago and had been systematically trying to take over Moretti territory ever since. The attack last night was the first time they have tried to kill me directly, Dante explained. Usually, they are more subtle, sabotaging our businesses, turning our allies against us, bribing politicians we rely on. But I struck back harder than they expected last month, cost them several $1 million and a major drug trafficking route. So, they decided to escalate. And I got caught in the middle, Naomi said. Yes, and for that, I am sorrier than you can possibly know. You seem like a good person, Naomi. Someone who works hard, who contributes to society, who makes the world better through your art and your work. You do not deserve to be dragged into my world. But I have been dragged into it, Naomi pointed out. So, what happens now? Do I just hide here forever? Do I go into witness protection or something? No, Dante said firmly. What happens now is that I send a very clear message to the Volkovs that you are not part of my organization, that you were simply an innocent bystander, and that harming you will bring down consequences they cannot imagine. I have people working on this already, reaching out through back channels, making sure everyone understands the situation. And you think they will just accept that? Just leave me alone because you tell them to? Yes, Dante said simply, because they know that if they harm you, I will burn their organization to the ground. There are rules in our world, Naomi. Lines that do not get crossed. Killing civilians, especially women who have no connection to our business, is one of those lines. Naomi wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that his confidence was well-founded. But she also knew she was dealing with criminals, with people for whom violence was a tool rather than a last resort. How long until I can go back to my normal life? She asked. A week, maybe less. Just long enough for the message to be sent and received, for everyone to understand the situation. Naomi nodded slowly. A week. She could survive a week in this gilded cage if it meant staying alive. As they cleaned up from lunch, Dante's phone rang. He answered, listened intently, then said something, in Italian, that made his expression darken. When he hung up, he looked at Naomi with concern. What? She asked, feeling fear spike in her chest. The Volkovs are not being reasonable. They are insisting that anyone who was with me last night is fair game, regardless of whether they are part of my organization. They see you as leverage against me. But that is insane. I am not leverage. I am just someone who sat in the wrong seat. They do not know that, Dante said quietly. All they know is that I protected you, that I brought you here to my personal safe house, that I am keeping you under guard. To them, that suggests you matter to me, and anything that matters to me is a weapon they can use against me. Naomi felt the room start to spin. So, I am not safe. Even here, even with all your security, I am not safe. You are safe here, Dante insisted. But we need to change our strategy. Instead of trying to convince them you are not important to me, we need to make it clear that harming you would cost them everything. We need to make you too dangerous to touch. How do you do that? Dante looked uncomfortable. By making it seem like you are more important to me than you actually are. By creating the impression that you are not just someone who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. but someone I care about, deeply. Someone I would go to war to protect. You want to fake a relationship, Naomi said, understanding dawning. As a deterrent. Yes. If the Volkovs believe you are special to me, if they believe hurting you would unleash my full wrath, they will think twice about targeting you. It is perverse logic. But in my world, it is the kind of logic that keeps people alive. Naomi laughed bitterly. This is insane. 2 days ago, I did not know you existed. Now you want me to pretend to be your girlfriend or whatever, just so some Russian mobsters will not kill me? Not just pretend, Dante said carefully. We would need to sell it, convincingly. Public appearances together. Evidence that we have a relationship. Enough visibility that everyone in the underworld knows you are under my protection in the most personal way possible. And what happens when this is all over? When the threat passes and we do not need to pretend anymore? Then we end things publicly but amicably, and you go back to your life knowing that you will always have my protection if you ever need it. Naomi stood and walked to the windows, looking out at the city. She felt trapped, cornered by circumstances she had never chosen, forced to make decisions between bad options and worse ones. But she was also practical enough to know that Dante was right. If playing the role of his girlfriend kept her alive, if it was the best strategy for neutralizing the threat against her, then it was what she would have to do. Okay, she said finally, turning back to face him. I will do it. I will pretend to be your girlfriend or whatever you need me to be. But I have conditions. Name them. First, you pay me for this. If I am going to put my life on hold and risk my safety for your plan, I want compensation. My salary at the gallery for however long this takes, plus extra for the danger and inconvenience. Dante nodded without hesitation. Done. What else? Second, you are honest with me. No more surprises. No more revelations that change everything. I need to know what I am getting into before I am in too deep to get out. Agreed, Dante said. And third, when this is over, when I am safe and can go back to my life, you let me go. No strings attached, no obligations, no expectations. Clean break. Dante was quiet for a long moment, and something flickered in his eyes that might have been disappointment. Agreed, he finally said. Though I hope when this is over, you might choose to stay in touch not because you have to, but because you want to. We will see, Naomi said, not willing to commit to anything beyond the immediate situation. So, how do we do this? How do we convince everyone that we are actually together? We start tonight, Dante said. There is a charity gala at the Regency Hotel. Very public, very visible. Everyone who matters in Chicago will be there, including people connected to the Volkovs. We attend together. We make sure everyone sees us together, and we plant the seeds of a relationship that started before last night. A relationship that started when? Naomi asked. We have been seeing each other quietly for the past 2 months, Dante said, and Naomi realized he had already worked this all out. We met at an art gallery showing, connected over a shared love of culture and art, and have been dating discreetly while getting to know each other. Last night at the opera was supposed to be one of our first truly public outings together, which is why the attack was so unexpected and why I was so protective of you. That is quite a detailed backstory, Naomi observed. In my world, details matter. The more specific the story, the more believable it becomes. We will need to get our facts straight, make sure we are telling the same story if anyone asks questions. They spent the next several hours going over their fictional relationship, creating a timeline of dates and conversations and moments that never actually happened but needed to seem real. Dante was thorough and patient, answering all of Naomi's questions, helping her understand the kind of world they would be moving in and the people they would be dealing with. As the afternoon wore on, Naomi found herself grudgingly impressed by Dante's intelligence and attention to detail. He was clearly someone who thought several moves ahead, who anticipated problems before they arose, who planned for contingencies most people would never consider. It made sense, she supposed. You did not become the head of a Mafia family by being careless or short-sighted. We should talk about physical affection, Dante said as evening approached. In order to sell this relationship, we will need to be comfortable with casual touching, with being in each other's personal space. Nothing inappropriate, but enough to seem like a real couple. Naomi felt her stomach flutter nervously. Like what? Holding hands when we walk. My arm around your waist or shoulders. Standing close to each other. The kind of subtle intimacy that couples display without thinking about it. He paused. We should probably practice. Make it seem natural rather than forced. It felt absurd, standing in the middle of a luxurious penthouse rehearsing how to look like a couple with a man she had met barely 24 hours ago. But Naomi understood the necessity. If they were going to do this, they needed to do it convincingly. Dante stepped closer and took her hand, his grip warm and firm. Like this, he said. Just holding hands, nothing dramatic. Let yourself lean into me slightly, like you are comfortable in my presence. Naomi did, as instructed, and was surprised by how natural it felt to stand close to Dante, to feel the warmth of his body and the solid strength of him beside her. He was so tall that even in the heels she would wear tonight, she would barely reach his shoulder. Now my arm around you, Dante said, sliding his hand to her waist. This is what I would do at the gala, keeping you close, showing everyone that you are with me. The possessiveness of the gesture should have bothered Naomi, but instead, she found it oddly comforting. After the terror of last night, after feeling so vulnerable and exposed, there was something reassuring about being claimed by someone powerful enough to protect her. Good, Dante said. You are a natural at this. Anyone watching us right now would believe we are together. They practiced a while longer, getting comfortable with casual touches and close proximity, and by the time Sophia arrived with a dress for the gala, Naomi felt reasonably confident that she could pull off the deception. The dress Sophia brought was stunning, a deep emerald green that complemented Naomi's dark skin beautifully. It was elegant and sophisticated, designer quality, and fit her perfectly when she tried it on. How did you know my size? Naomi asked Sophia as the assistant helped with the zipper. Mr. Moretti has an excellent eye for details, Sophia said diplomatically. Naomi studied herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back at her. She looked polished, glamorous, like someone who belonged on the arm of a powerful man. 2 hours later, she descended the stairs to find Dante waiting in a tuxedo, looking devastatingly handsome. He turned as she approached, and something in his expression shifted, became softer and more appreciative. You look incredible, he said, offering his hand to help her down the last few steps. So do you, Naomi replied honestly. They rode to the gala in comfortable silence, and as they pulled up to the Regency Hotel, Dante turned to her one last time. Are you ready for this? Once we walk in there together, once people see us as a couple, there is no going back. The story becomes real in a way that matters. I am ready, Naomi said, surprised to find that she meant it. Then let us show Chicago who you are, Dante said, and helped her out of the car. As they walked into the glittering ballroom together, Dante's arm protectively around her waist, Naomi felt the weight of hundreds of eyes turning to stare. She lifted her chin and smiled, playing her part, and tried not to think about how complicated her life had become in less than 48 hours. The gala was everything Naomi expected, and more. Crystal chandeliers, champagne flowing freely, elegantly dressed people networking and gossiping and conducting the kind of business that happens when the city's elite gather in one place. But what Naomi had not expected was the way people reacted to seeing her with Dante. Some stared openly. Others whispered behind raised hands. A few bold individuals approached to introduce themselves, their eyes curious and assessing as they sized up Dante's mysterious new companion. Dante handled it all with smooth confidence, introducing Naomi as his girlfriend and deflecting prying questions with practiced ease. He kept his arm around her the entire time, the gesture both protective and proprietary, making it absolutely clear to everyone watching that Naomi was under his protection. You are doing wonderfully, Dante murmured in her ear during a brief moment of privacy. Everyone here believes we are together. Mission accomplished. I feel like I am on display, Naomi admitted. Every time someone looks at us, I wonder what they are thinking, what they know about you, whether they are judging me for being here with you. They are definitely judging you, Dante said with a slight smile, but not the way you think. They are wondering how someone like you ended up with someone like me. They are trying to figure out if you are an opportunist, a fool, or genuinely in love. And they are all coming to different conclusions because you are impossible to read. which is perfect. Before Naomi could respond, a woman approached, tall and striking, with platinum blonde hair and an expression that could have frozen water. "Dante," she said, her accent unmistakably Russian. "How nice to see you. I heard about the unfortunate incident at the opera last night. Such a tragedy when violence interrupts culture." "Irina," Dante replied, his voice polite but cool, "I did not expect to see you here tonight. I thought your family was boycotting this event in protest of the host's political donations." Irina Volkova, Naomi realized. This was one of the rival family members, someone directly connected to the people who had tried to kill Dante last night. She felt Dante's arm tighten protectively around her waist. "We decided it would be poor form to miss such an important social event," Irina said, her eyes sliding to Naomi with calculated interest. "And who is this charming companion? I do not believe we have met." "This is Naomi Washington," Dante said. "My girlfriend." "Naomi, this is Irina Volkova." "Girlfriend," Irina repeated as if testing the word. "How interesting. I had not heard you were seeing anyone seriously, Dante. When did this happen?" "We have been together for a few months," Dante replied smoothly. "We were keeping things private, but after last night, after nearly losing her to your family's reckless violence, I decided privacy was less important than making sure everyone understands how much she means to me." The threat in Dante's words was subtle, but unmistakable. Naomi saw Irina's eyes sharpen, saw her reassess the situation with a predator's calculation. "How romantic," Irina said, though her tone suggested she found nothing romantic about it at all. "You must be very special, Miss Washington, to have captured Dante Moretti's attention. He has never been one for serious relationships, preferring to keep his personal life, shall we say, uncomplicated. Naomi is worth complicating my life for," Dante said, and the conviction in his voice sounded disturbingly real. "I hope we understand each other, Irina. Miss Washington is not part of our business, not part of our world. She is an innocent civilian who happens to be important to me. Harming her would be a mistake of catastrophic proportions." Irina studied them both for a long moment, then smiled coldly. "I will make sure that message is communicated to the appropriate people. Enjoy your evening, Dante. Miss Washington." She walked away, and Naomi let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. "That was terrifying," she admitted. "She looked at me like she was trying to decide whether I was worth killing." "She was," Dante said bluntly. "But I think we convinced her that you are too valuable to me to risk, which is exactly what we needed to do." The rest of it. The evening passed in a blur of introductions, subtle threats disguised as polite conversation, and the constant awareness that they were being watched and evaluated by dozens of interested parties. By the time they left the gala several hours later, Naomi was exhausted but also oddly exhilarated. She had survived her first public appearance as Dante Moretti's girlfriend, had stared down members of a Russian crime family, and had played her part well enough to convince a room full of criminals and socialites that she was exactly where she belonged. Back at the penthouse, Dante helped her out of her coat, his hands lingering on her shoulders for just a moment. "You were magnificent tonight," he said quietly. "I know this is not what you wanted, not what you chose, but you handled yourself with grace and intelligence and courage. I am impressed." "I was terrified the entire time," Naomi admitted. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you careful. But you did not let the fear control you, and that is what matters." They stood there in the dimly lit entryway, and Naomi was acutely aware of how close Dante was, of how easy it would be to close the distance between them, to turn their pretend relationship into something real. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. "I should go to bed," she said, taking a step back. "Tomorrow is going to be another long day." "Naomi," Dante said as she turned to leave. "Yes? Thank you. For agreeing to this plan, for putting yourself in this position to stay safe. I know you must resent me for dragging you into my world, but I want you to know that I will do everything in my power to make sure you come through this unharmed." "I know," Naomi said softly. "Despite everything, despite who you are and what you do, I believe that you will protect me. I do not know why I believe it, but I do." "Because I have already proven it," Dante said simply. "When those bullets were flying, I did not think about my own safety. I only thought about yours. That is not something I can fake or pretend." That is real. The intensity of his gaze made Naomi's breath catch. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and retreated to the bedroom before she could do something foolish like close the distance between them and find out if the electricity she felt was mutual. Over the next week, Naomi and Dante settled into a strange routine. They appeared together at public events, always the perfect couple, always showing just enough affection to be convincing without crossing lines that would make Naomi uncomfortable. They had dinner together every evening, sometimes at restaurants where they would be seen, sometimes at the penthouse where they could drop the pretense and just talk. And gradually, almost without Naomi realizing it was happening, the line between pretending and reality began to blur. She found herself looking forward to their evenings together, to Dante's dry wit and sharp intelligence, to the way he listened when she talked about her work and her passion for art. She learned more about him, too, about the man beneath the criminal reputation. She learned that he had studied art history in college before family obligations pulled him into the business. She learned that he donated anonymously to dozens of charities, that he had set up scholarship funds for kids from his old neighborhood, that he genuinely tried to minimize violence whenever possible. "I am not a good man," Dante told her one evening as they shared wine on the penthouse balcony. "I have done terrible things, things I cannot undo or apologize for. But I am trying to be better than my father was, better than the role I inherited. I am trying to use my position to do some good along with the bad." "Why?" Naomi asked. "Why try to be better, if this is the life you were born into?" "Because of my mother," Dante said quietly. "She used to tell me that we always have choices, even when it does not feel like it. We can choose to be cruel or kind, to cause pain or prevent it, to leave the world better or worse than we found it. She believed that even in the darkest circumstances, we could find ways to be good. I am trying to honor that belief, even if I fail more often than I succeed." Naomi reached over and took his hand, and was surprised when Dante interlaced their fingers as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "You protected me," she said. "Without hesitation, without knowing me, you put yourself between me and bullets. That is not the action of a bad man. Or it is the action of a bad man trying very hard to do one good thing," Dante replied. They sat in comfortable silence, hands still clasped, and Naomi realized with a start that this, whatever this was developing between them, felt real in a way that had nothing to do with their pretense or their arrangement. 2 weeks after the opera incident, Dante called Naomi into his home office for a meeting. His expression was serious, and Naomi felt her stomach tighten with anxiety. "What is wrong?" she asked as she sat down across from his desk. "Is there a new threat?" "No," Dante said. "Actually, the opposite. I have been informed through back channels that the Volkovs have accepted the situation. They believe we are together. They understand that harming you would trigger a war they cannot win, and they have agreed to back off. You are no longer a target." Naomi should have felt relief, should have been thrilled that the danger had passed. Instead, she felt something that might have been disappointment. "So, I can go home, back to my normal life." "Yes," Dante said. And was it her imagination? Or did he sound reluctant? "You can go home whenever you want. Your apartment has been under guard, your job is still waiting for you, and I will make sure you have security for a while longer just to be safe. But the immediate threat is over." "That is good news," Naomi said carefully. "It is," Dante agreed. "Which brings us to our arrangement. We discussed ending things publicly but amicably, and I think we should do that over the next week or so. Gradually distance ourselves, let people see us less together, until it becomes clear that we have decided to go our separate ways." "Right," Naomi said. "That makes sense." They sat there for a long moment, and Naomi realized that neither of them seemed happy about this development. The threat was over, which should have been cause for celebration, but instead, it felt like an ending neither of them really wanted. "Unless," Dante said slowly, "you would prefer a different arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" Naomi asked, her heart starting to beat faster. "The kind where we do not have to pretend anymore because we are not pretending. The kind where you give me a chance to prove that what I feel for you is real, not just part of a strategy or a plan. The kind where we see if this connection between us, This thing that has been building over the past 2 weeks is something worth exploring. Naomi stared at him, shocked. You want to actually date me? For real? Yes, Dante said simply. I know it is complicated. I know my world is dangerous and messy and nothing like what you deserve. But Naomi, these past 2 weeks with you have been the happiest I have been in years. You make me want to be better, to do better. You make me laugh and think and feel things I had forgotten I was capable of feeling. Dante, Naomi started, but he held up a hand. Before you say no, before you list all the very good reasons why this is a terrible idea, let me say one more thing. I am falling in love with you. I have been falling since the moment you looked up at me in that opera house with confusion and apology in your eyes. I have been falling since you bravely faced down Russian mobsters at that gala. I have been falling every evening when you talk about art and passion and making the world better, and I want the chance to fall all the way, if you will. Let me. Naomi felt tears building in her eyes. This was insane. This man was a criminal, a mafia boss, someone whose world was filled with violence and danger. Getting involved with him was potentially the worst decision she could make. But she also could not deny the way her heart raced when he walked into a room. The way she felt safe despite all the danger, the way she had come to treasure their evenings together, and the easy conversation and growing intimacy between them. I am scared, she admitted. I know. I am scared too. I have never let anyone this close, never allowed myself to care about someone the way I care about you. But I think some things are worth being scared for, worth taking risks for. What if it does not work? What if we try this and discover that we are too different, that our worlds do not fit together? Then we will have tried, Dante said gently, and we will know we gave it a chance instead of walking away and spending the rest of our lives wondering, what if? Naomi stood and walked to the windows, looking out at the city that had become so familiar over the past 2 weeks. She thought about her life before the opera, safe and predictable and somehow unsatisfying. She thought about how she had been going through the motions, doing everything right but never feeling truly alive. And she thought about how these past 2 weeks, despite the danger and fear, had been more exciting and meaningful than the past 2 years combined. Okay, she heard herself say. Yes? Dante asked, hope clear in his voice. Yes, let us try this. For real, not pretending. But Dante, you have to promise me something. Anything. You have to be honest with me. Always. About your business, about the risks, about everything. I cannot do this if I am constantly in the dark about what is happening. I need to know what I am getting into. I promise, Dante said, crossing the room to stand beside her. Complete honesty, even when the truth is difficult or uncomfortable. He took her hand, and Naomi turned to face him. They stood there, looking at each other, and Naomi saw in Dante's eyes everything she felt, fear and hope and desire, and the terrifying possibility of something real. So, what do we do now? She asked. Now, Dante said, pulling her gently into his arms. I do something I have wanted to do for the past 2 weeks but could not, because we were only pretending. He lowered his head and kissed her, and Naomi felt the last of her resistance melt away. This was real, more real than anything she had experienced in a long time. Dangerous and complicated, and absolutely worth the risk. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. I am going to do everything I can to be worthy of you, he said quietly. I am going to try to be the man you deserve, even if that is impossible. Just be yourself, Naomi replied. The man who threw himself in front of bullets for a stranger. The man who protected me without asking for anything in return. The man who quotes poetry and loves opera and tries to do good even in a bad world. That is the man I am falling for. Then, that is the man I will try to be, Dante promised. Over the next 6 months, Naomi and Dante built something remarkable. It was not easy. There were challenges that came with dating someone whose job involved criminal activities and constant danger. There were late nights when Dante had to handle business emergencies that he could not discuss with her. There were moments when Naomi questioned whether she was compromising her values by being with him. But there were also moments of pure joy and connection. Evenings at the opera where they could simply enjoy music together. gallery openings where Dante stood proudly beside her as she explained her curatorial choices. Quiet dinners where they talked for hours about everything and nothing. Dante slowly introduced her to his world, but carefully, always making sure she understood the risks and giving her the choice to be involved or not. Naomi met his family, his trusted associates, the people who made up his inner circle. They were not what she expected. They were complicated, flawed people who had chosen a difficult path but who also had loyalty and honor in their own way. And Naomi found herself welcomed by them, accepted as someone important to Dante and therefore important to the family. She also introduced Dante to her world, to her friends and colleagues who were initially shocked that she was dating someone with his reputation, but who gradually came to see what she saw in him, the intelligence and wit and genuine kindness beneath the dangerous exterior. One evening, 9 months after that fateful night at the opera, Dante took Naomi back to the opera house. They sat in the same seats where they had first met, Section B, Row D, seats 12 and 13. "I wanted to bring you back here," Dante said as the lights dimmed. "To the place where everything started, where you sat in the wrong seat and changed my life completely." "It was the right seat," Naomi said, taking his hand. "It was exactly where I needed to be." "I love you, Naomi Washington," Dante said. "I love who you are, what you stand for, the way you make me want to be better. And I want to ask you something important." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, and Naomi's breath caught. "Dante," she whispered. "I know this is complicated," he said. "I know my world is not what you imagined for yourself when you dreamed about your future, but I am asking you anyway, hoping you will say yes. Will you marry me? Will you take a chance on a man who is trying very hard to be worthy of you? Will you let me spend the rest of my life protecting you and loving you and making sure you never regret sitting in the wrong seat that night?" Naomi looked at the ring, at Dante's hopeful expression, at the opera house around them where their story had begun in such an unlikely way, and she thought about how the best things in life were often the ones you did not plan for, the ones that happened when you took risks and followed your heart instead of your head. "Yes," she said, and watched Dante's face break into a smile of pure joy. "Yes, I will marry you. I will take that chance, because you are worth it. We are worth it." He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her as the opera began, the music swelling around them, and Naomi knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Because sometimes the wrong seat was exactly the right place to be, and sometimes the most dangerous man in the room was the one who would love you most fiercely and completely. That is the story of Naomi Washington and Dante Moretti, the curator and the Mafia boss who found love in the middle of chaos and violence. Their story proves that protection can lead to something deeper than safety, that love can grow from the most unlikely beginnings, and that sometimes taking a risk on an impossible person leads to the most extraordinary life. If this incredible story of unexpected love, dangerous protection, and choosing courage over fear moved you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more stories about real people who discovered that the most meaningful connections often come from the most unlikely circumstances. Drop a comment and tell me your favorite moment. Was it when Dante shielded Naomi with his body during the shooting? When they confronted the Volkovs at the gala? Or when Dante proposed in the same seats where they first met? Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story about love that defies expectations and the bravery it takes to build something beautiful in an imperfect world. Remember, sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the safest one when you choose to trust someone who has proven they will protect you at any cost. Until next time, keep believing that love can find us in the most unexpected places, and that the right person is worth every risk.